Hey guys, it's Caban with True Champion Gaming, and today I get to talk to you about one of my pet decks. So I absolutely love Wind Merlin. I've probably played like 30 to 40 different variants of this deck already. Really have spent the most time in this deck trying to build it to be super competitive, and it always just feels a little short. However, we finally made a list that I do think is the best Wind Merlin list that exists. We almost took it to Ascent Auckland. However, the only issue is that it has an abysmal Rye matchup. The Rye matchup is almost unwinnable. Against everything else, though, it actually held up really strong. And I do think that, if you have a locals that doesn't have a lot of Rye players, you can bring this deck, have a lot of fun, and hopefully smash some games as well. Or if you're just okay having an auto loss, that is a part of card games. There are just decks with an auto loss. People do play those types of decks all the time. This is a really, really great deck to pick up. So let's go ahead and jump right into the list. So we have Spirit of Wind. This is Wind Merlin after all. This allows you to play all the value wind cards. We have Lorraine level 1. This has been such a struggle with me in Wind Merlin. I've gone between Rye level 1 and Lorraine level 1 so many times because I do think in specifically Wind, they feel the most interchangeable. I think Fire and Water, you have a little bit more reasons to go Lorraine. Fire is a little bit interchangeable as well. I do think Rye start and Fire is good. But anyways, we are running the level 1 Lorraine. So we are going to be able to get the Sword of Seeking from her effect when we play level 1 Lorraine. It brings out a 0-cost sword. This is the only 0-cost sword we bring out. So we get a Sword of Seeking, 2 durability counters, very, very crucial, and we'll get to that later. Level 2 Merlin, our only option since we're playing a Merlin deck. 22 health, you can banish Floating Memory to level up, which you will use very often. And then level 3 Merlin Kingslayer. So basically in this deck, we are just trying to rush to level 3 as fast as possible and getting the most value out of her effect, and then unlocking Crux very early as well. We do have the Majestic Spirit in here. Again, another card that I've taken in and out of Wind Merlin list a lot. Is running this card and Incarnate Majesties, that little mini package. It's a very, very strong card, and in this deck, it does make sense. You're really trying to rush to this as one of your main win conditions. We have Prismatic Edge. This is our other win condition, and we'll definitely dive into it later in the deck list, but this is going to really accelerate your whole engine with the way that we do things. We run the Prismatic package, so we're running Fire and Water cards in here, and then obviously our main deck is mostly Wind, so we try to get all 3 colors if possible. We run Drawn Blade, really good advantage or value engine in this list. If you get a Floating Memory in the mid to late game, just use that, go into Drawn Blade, put it back with Ghost Pendragon, stuff like that. Just a lot of value. We have Grand Crusader's Ring. Grail would be nice to to use with Lantern and stuff like that, but GCR, it does feel pretty needed. I would put Grail Lantern in the sideboard though. You can only run 1 Divine Relic, which is why you have to choose GCR over Grail. Then we have Crystal of Empowerment. This is literally only in here to get out your Incarnate faster. Like I said, rushing Incarnate can be your main strategy against a lot of different decks. So just turboing into level 3, materializing this, popping it, having enough cards to go into Incarnate is a very, very good use of a materialization. We have a Safeguard Amulet in here. This could also just be a Lantern instead. I mainly had this in here because we thought Erupting was going to become really popular, and honestly, Erupting is almost always just barely killing you. So a Safeguard Amulet can buy you another turn, which against Erupting is really all you need, I think. So we had Safeguard Amulet in here and Azure Protective Trinket. We were thinking it was going to be a very fire-heavy meta, and this deck definitely needs Safeguard and Trinket to have a chance against those type of aggro decks. So yeah, that was the main board. If you don't have as much of a fire aggro meta, you can definitely choose some other options. I know we talked about Zephyr's Edge at one point, Terraframe, stuff like that. But quick word from Isaac, and then we'll move on to the main deck.
Hey everyone, it's Isaac. If you want to support us, get merch, or pre-order the next set from GA, then you should check out our website. Over on our website, you'll find stickers, t-shirts, playmats, and material deck sleeves, and the next set of Grand Archive for pre-order. So make sure to check that out. Also, if you like content, then you should check out our Patreon. Over there, we have an exclusive podcast series, extra gameplay videos, and articles written by us to help your competitive gameplay. In any case, if you like what we do here on YouTube, then don't forget to like and subscribe, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you.
Okay, so in the main deck, we have the card that's been in every single Wind Merlin list ever for me is Ghost of Pendragon. Wind can abuse this card like crazy. It's one of the biggest reasons that I like playing Wind Merlin. This just feels so incredibly strong. You can play it, return a material deck card, which is why we need that 2 durability from the free cost sword that you bring out. So you bring out Sword of Seeking, you can swing with it once to turn on like something like a Tactful Sergeant that we run in here, and then leave it on your board with 1 durability and put it back with Ghost of Pendragon later. Very, very strong card. Arguably, I think our Ghost of Pendragon is probably the strongest card in the game right now. Then we also have 4 Incarnate Majesties. We run the Majestic Spirit. You know, you run this card to get the Majestic Spirit out. That card is going to allow you to do some damage, but also be a huge defensive option. And then like you saw the Prismatic Edge being in the deck, we also run Spirit Blade Ascension. So another thing you can do is, you know, swing with your Sword of Seeking to do whatever, and then once it's on 1 durability, you can just put it back with Ascension. You've already gotten a little bit of value out of it, and then bring out Prismatic Edge, get some more value as well. So very strong card there. And then 3 Crux Sight. So a fairly standard Crux package. You know, Lantern is pretty popular right now, so I just didn't really want to go up on Crux Sight anymore. But yeah, it's just crazy stuff here. And then now we get to the more interesting part of the deck. So we have 1 Arthur and 3 Lunette in here, and this is going to start like showing a little bit why this deck's so cool. So I will say we built this more for Ascent Auckland, where we did think fire was going to be one of the most prevalent colors. Wind, we already obviously have a lot of cards of, and then water was the color that we expected to play the least. So we ran this count because of the meta that we expected. I would say that you can change these counts depending on how your meta is. I think because of the success of Water Lorraine at Auckland, water is going to probably become a little bit more prevalent. So maybe you could do more of a 2-2 count. But the reason that we wanted to run these specific cards is because they're obviously fire and water element, but they're humans. And we will get to that in a bit. Normally, you know, you've seen Prismatic Fire that'll run Floating Memory, water and fire cards, or water and grass, or wind, geez, because they are a fire deck. And they do that because they can discard cards and use the Floating Memory, even though they can't play the card themselves. We don't really have a good way to discard cards, but we found another use. So the fact that they're humans is very, very, very relevant. We have a couple of norm cards. We have 4 Resolute Stands. This is literally your win con against Swarm decks. You know, you can set up kind of an unbeatable board eventually, but you have to reach that state first, and Resolute Stand is how you're going to live against them. We have 4 Fast Gear, kind of same thought process there. You're trying to live against the decks that are dealing a lot of damage to you fast, and we turbo level on this deck, so the Floating Memory is super nice as well. Then we have 4 Dungeon Guide, another staple in any level 3 deck, basically. This is what's allowing us to turbo level. We have 2 Blanche mainboarded. This was not only for, you know, like to have a shot against Rye if people play like a little suboptimally against you. I don't think people expect the main deck Blanche as much anymore as they used to. And so this was in here in the main board to hopefully have a Rye player commit to like trying to kill you almost perfectly and putting all their resources down, and then you Blanche and survive with just a couple health, and then you kill them on the crackback or something. It is also really good against like fire aggro decks that are going to try to blazing throw you and stuff like that. And there's just a lot of spell damage out. So I do still think that this card's really good, and it's also human, just like Dungeon Guide and the multicolored cards that we were playing that we showed earlier. So that will come up. We have 3 Beseech. Like I said, we are turbo leveling. Beseech is fantastic for that. I will literally sit there and just Beseech my level 1 right away on my first turn, go to my materialization for my second turn, use the other 2 cards that I put down to level up. And yeah, it took you 4 cards to do it, but you got to level 2 faster than pretty much anyone else can. So what's crazy is if you're going first, you can Beseech into your level 1. Your opponent will have their turn. Maybe they put a Floating Memory in the grave if they're fire by like cremating an Honorable Vanguard or Creative Shocking something or whatever. And then you can go into your level 2 on your second turn of the game, which is really crazy because normally you'd have to have like a Dungeon Guide or something. This just allows you more ways to do that. So you can basically turn on your level 2 Merlin effect to eat up Floating Memory faster than anyone else can. So that was a big part of the deck. We have 4 Tactful Sergeant in here. It's a human, which I keep pointing out. which was important for the deck, and this was our way to continue to turbo level. So we do whatever we need to do to go into level 1, Fast Cure, Beseech, whatever it is. There's a couple other cards that you can play that we haven't shown yet. And then you get your free sword out, you swing with it, you play Tactful, and this card is allowing you to level up. Since it's a 4 cost, you'll be able to go into level 2 or level 3 no matter what, even if your opponent does like a Chilling Touch against you. And you're also drawing a card in your memory, so it's replacing itself. So really good card. It is on the watch list, but people kind of joke, including us at True Champion Gaming, about this card being on the watch list because it definitely seems like the weakest card on there. It was pretty good in DOA meta, but ever since FTC, I honestly don't know if we've seen a single deck at like an Ascent Day 2, even with this in it. It's just been a really, really weak card so far, but it's very strong in this specific deck. All right, I finally get to show my favorite card and the card that we built this deck around, and the reason why I think this deck is the best Wind Merlin deck out there. So get ready for this super secret, broken card, absolutely insane. It's Rally the Peasants. No, I'm not joking. This card is actually crazy good. So you probably have to read this. I'll read it out loud. Not a lot of people have seen this card before, at least played competitively. It is a 3-drop Action Warrior skill. Its class bonus can come up. You are Warrior on your level 1 and level 3, just not on your level 2, because you switch to Merlin 2, which is just Mage. But class bonus is, it costs 3 less to activate if an opponent controls 3 or more allies, which it normally costs 3, so it is actually a 0 cost. Remember that this is not optional. This card will cost 0 if your opponent has 3 or more allies and you are Warrior. So if you're playing against this and you see someone pay 3 when they should be paying 0, remind them that is a mismanaged game state or whatever that phrase is. So yeah, or whether you're playing yourself, definitely remember to do that. It can come up. There are a lot of ally swarm decks out there right now. Honestly though, the best use for this card is turn 1. You play it, you get a look at the top 6 cards of your deck. You may reveal a human card from among them and put them in your hand. You're always going to want to do that if you see a human. And you put the rest in the bottom of your deck in any order. This is a slow speed as well. So the best thing to do is honestly turn 1, put 3 down, which is a really good cost for it for like leveling up purposes. You can get into your level 1, level 2, or level 3. And it's going to basically almost like always replace itself. We tested a lot of games with this deck, and it's the reason that we have the human counts to what they are. Like, that's the biggest reason for the 2 Blanche, was honestly including more humans. And yeah, like you're almost never gonna miss it. And this allows you to search out Dungeon Guide faster, which is crazy. So Merlin decks always want to see Dungeon Guide as a very strong card in that deck. Now you can play Rally the Peasants, put 3 down, replace the card in your hand. So you're kind of doing that fire thing where fire's always like keeping the same amount of value or like slowly netting some with like Creative Shock and like discarding the floating memory and stuff like that. So you're replacing itself, you put 3 down, you can banish one of those, and now you're turbo leveling without actually losing as many resources. Not only can you try to get the dungeon guides for the turbo level, you can also grab a Tactful Surgeon. Like I said, one of the best turn 2s that you can do is, play something turn 1, go into level 1 Lorraine with your sword, swing sword, and then play Tactful. So this can set up your turn 2 very, very easily. And even playing this in the late game, hopefully your opponent actually has 3 allies at that point or something. You can play it for free, and you can search out your multicolored cards, your Lunettes and your Arthur that we're running, and it's why we ran those ones. You can run some other options. I think like Nia is the same. It doesn't really matter as long as you're running a different color human. This can set up your prismatic package. And we're not done with how much value this card gives you. It's actually an insane card, I promise. You can also search out Ghost of Pendragon. Ghost of Pendragon is actually human. And like I said, Wind can really abuse Ghost of Pendragon. I spent a long time on a list that had no other Crux cards other than Ghost of Pendragon. And it was completely built around just trying to abuse it as much as possible. It was a good list, but it lost to a couple different matchups. And even in the matchups that I had favored, if I didn't see Ghost, I just lost. So Rally the Peasants is just actually a phenomenal card in here. I really do expect this list to perform pretty well. I'm going to definitely be playing it in like the Yeti locals and stuff. There's not too many events left in this format, and I don't know how well it'll carry. We don't know how well any decks will carry over to the next format, but Anyways, I know I spent a lot of time talking about this card. This card was our breakthrough with the deck. We finally realized the value that this card could give, and we built the entire deck around it, and it performed really well. So don't sleep on the peasants. All right, and speaking of how to abuse Ghost of Pendragon, Disorienting Winds is a crazy card. So you are Merlin level 3, and we're trying to rush Merlin level 3. So you're pretty much going to be playing this card for free, like really fast. And then you can just bounce your Ghost of Pendragon, replace itself by drawing a card, and then use Ghost of Pendragon again. Not only allowing you to get like 3 more damage because you're essentially restanding it for another attack, but also abusing that on-enter effect as well. Don't be scared to use this against Swarm decks. I will literally play this turn 1 if my opponent goes like Lurking Assailant or like Squirrel Ace-in or something like that. I'll just go, okay, put 5 down, Disorienting Winds, draw it back into my hand, and now similar to Rally of the Peasants, I put cards down to level up with without actually losing a card from my hand, and I also like distempoed my opponent. So this is like literally one of my favorite cards in the game and incredibly strong. It's like the reason to play Wind, honestly. I really, really love that card. We have 4 Reclaim. This is in here because, again, we're turbo leveling, so the floating memory is really nice. And you play a lot of allies early that you just don't really care about. You play the Tactful to get the draw on the board. You don't really play it to have a 1/4 sitting there that's not really going to do anything. So if you can do something like Reclaim to put it back in your hand, again, you're doing that kind of like fire thing where they're always like gaining a little bit of value in the early game with like the floating memory stuff. You can kind of copy them as well. So Dungeon Guides, Tactful Surgeons, even doing it late game with the Ghost of Pendragon is essentially just doing a really slow Disorienting Winds. So just really good value there. We play 4 Displace. This is mainly in here, honestly, for Majestic Spirit. This is how you keep your Majestic Spirit alive and the effect on board. We don't run Veiling because we just don't have enough wind in the deck to do so. So you really do sometimes have to rely on your Majestic Spirit to keep you alive, and Displace is your best utility for if they try to play an answer to the Spirit. It can be also used to do another Ghost of Pendragon effect if you need to do something like that, or displacing an opponent's Gildas when they're trying to swing 4 at you or something like that. So very versatile card. The Enlightenment counter doesn't come up as often since we're not running Ventus and we're not running level 1 Ryan stuff, but theoretically if you play 3 of these in one game, which has happened to us before, you can actually get a card draw from it as well. So really strong card, of course. And then the last card in the deck is for Zephyr. This is a phenomenal card in here. So if your opponent tries to like Dream Fairy your Spirit and you don't have another Incarnate Majesty or Cruxite, if you don't have another way to get it back out, you can Zephyr it, which is a little worse than Displace since you lose that effect for the turn, but it's another way to keep an Incarnate Majesty alive. A lot of utility with like Zephyring away an opponent's Terrafring before you're about to do your big attack turn. Zephyring away a Tithe Proclamation because you can get some insane turns where you'll draw 10 plus cards in one turn. So Zephyring a Tithe is really worth it. Zephyring away an Interceptor or Taunt. There's so much utility for this, and a big one is Zephyring your Prismatic Edges. So if you can get a double or tricolor Prismatic Edge, you're going to get a lot of value from that. And so Zephyr is just essentially another Ascension in that point. You're not going to get the effect immediately, but sometimes that's fine. It's just a crazy good card in the list. And so yeah, that's the list, guys. I'm sure you heard it in my voice, but I have a lot of passion for this list. I do really think it's cool. I think it's fun. I think it's also actually really good. It's definitely the best Merlin win list that I've personally created and played. And I think it should get a little bit more respect than it does. I think it's just a little under the map. It took a lot of creativity to build this list, but I really firmly believe in it. So we don't have a sideboard here because I think it's really meta dependent for what you're going to see. But again, I do think things like Grail and Lantern in the sideboard is pretty imperative for when you're playing against like fire decks that really rely on the graveyard. You can do Cry for Help, Terrafring, more copies of Blanche. You could even do Veiling. We were messing around with that at one point just for those matchups that like a Swarm matchup to kind of just act as like another Resolute. So you're not trying to Veiling for like 7, but you're trying to Veiling for like 2 or something like that. But yeah, tons of options. I do think the list could probably be curated a little bit more, but I do think it is pretty shaped. I do think that's like really close to what my final list for this would look like. Like I said, we did almost bring this to Ascent Auckland. It was just purely the Rye matchup was honestly the only reason we didn't. But yeah, enough of me rambling. I know this was a little bit longer of a deck profile, but I wanted to explain. I know we have a lot of new viewers on the channel and a lot of people jumping into Grand Archive for the first time. So hopefully everything makes sense. If you're still confused about anything, definitely feel free to comment below. Either someone at True Champion Gaming or a lot of people in the community are awesome, and they'll respond to your questions themselves as well. So make sure to go check out our website. We have set 3 boxes and singles up soon, but boxes and cases are available for pre-order, and we will be putting up singles on there for ALC once we have the full spoiler list. So thanks as always, guys. Peace.